Hi, it's Kevin May, PhocusWire at the Phocuswright Conference 2021. I'm here in our studio with Alice Ferrari, the CEO of Kyte. Thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure to be here.
A very belated congratulations, because you were one of our Hot 25 for 2021. We've actually just released the 2022 cohort this week, but you were in last year's collection. So yeah, I say a belated congratulations.
Thank you.
For that.
It's as I said, it's an honor, and I have to live up to it now. So
okay, we'll see how you get on over the next 10 minutes. And we'll come to some kind of company stuff in a moment, but
Great.
Specifically around the product, Alice, if we can. So Kyte Direct Connect networks airlines, and it specifically allows airlines to control the relationship with the customers, which I think is a really interesting point. So talk us through, Alice, if you can, controlling the relationship, because that's very different from controlling the price.
Correct.
And controlling the experience. So control the relationship, what's that about?
Well, actually, we've evolved Kyte a little bit over the last year. So Kyte's actually become an API, a distribution and retail API provider for airlines. What we saw is basically we want to help airlines really maximize the opportunity that NDC offers, but with technology that's more appropriate for offering today an online sort of shopping experience. It is a unified API, meaning that all airlines using the Kyte API are using the same channel, so that for travel sellers, they only have to integrate once to access all the airlines using it. So, but the key difference here is that it is a tool for airlines, and hence why they have the control over the relationship, because they're completely empowered with newer channels to do whatever they want to do and connect to who they want.
So tell us, what are some of the data elements that make up that relationship, to kind of labour the point on the relationship word, because I think that's the important part.
Yeah, so I think, historically there's been a lot of disintermediation, and airlines have suffered from the fact that they had less control over their product, and that obviously hindered innovation. That's why they've suffered from lower revenue margins, not being able to keep up with bigger retailers that they always compare themselves with. So for us, it was, obviously they did the great first step, and NDC actually was purposely done to own that relationship. But, adoption of NDC hasn't been as fast as desired because of its challenges around the technicals. So we're there basically to expedite that.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the company then, because you said, we've evolved over the last year. Was that evolution as a result of what was going on in the big world with the pandemic, or was that part of the strategy for the company as you were starting to reach into 2021?
Good question. I'm not sure the pandemic had a direct impact, although we did realize that, being an aggregator in this world is very difficult, because you're having to shift all the costs to the travel seller, and it's difficult for travel sellers to have to take that hit. Reduced reliance on GDS is already a big thing, because NDC at the moment isn't probably as complete as the GDS product, and having to then leave a comfortable GDS contract where they're getting incentives, and then having to move on to an aggregator where they actually have to pay transaction fees is very difficult. So also we thought that as an aggregator we wouldn't be so close to the airline and helping them really get new features, new products, any way to really differentiate. Whereas as an API provider, you can really help. You have a bigger opportunity basically to help the airlines. And yes, probably it is related to the pandemic, because now more than ever airlines really need to work on their top line and get themselves back on their feet, really.
So when you became part of our Hot 25 collection last year, you said one of your goals for this year was to grow partners.
Yes.
So brave face, how did that go?
It's gone well.
Okay.
We have 7 airlines, 7 agreements with airlines. They're all world-leading airlines. Actually, I'm really happy to announce this is a top sort of a
global exclusive. Is
a global
how
exclusive that I've been keeping just for you guys.
Okay.
We now have Iberia on the platform, which is really great, because it will allow us to tap into a new market, especially around Europe and South America. So
Okay.
we're really excited about that. So top tier airlines, we started with that because it allows us to basically attract better travel sellers at the other end and actually add a lot of value to airlines who will join us further on later on the platform.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about company stuff now rather than product stuff. So how have you found, what's been your kind of approach to fundraising, and have you found that difficult? Because I think it would be, and forgive me if you think I'm incorrect, but I think it would be fair to say that there are other startups not doing exactly the same thing, very unique, etc. But around airline distribution, they're all fighting for different kind of investment money. How have you found the experience of either trying and successfully fundraising so far?
Yeah, so fundraising really hit me in the face because I started Kyte in January 2020, went on to fundraise in March 2020, and I think everyone will always remember what happened in March 2020. So I was actually really close to closing a pre-seed round, which obviously, with all the tensions in the industry and no one had really any clarity, the investors pulled out. So at that point, rather than wasting time, I decided to just focus on the product. That's when we sort of reinvented Kyte. We sort of threw out what we had as an MVP and built it again. And then because VCs were a bit uncertain about the industry, I decided to go the angel investment side, where people were closer to the industry who really could understand the potential of what we were doing. So that's how we raised our pre-seed, if you like. Brought on some great investors like Doug Anderson, former CEO of Amex GBT, the former CIO of LATAM, Dirk John, who came in through Plug and Play. So that was really, really good, and it allowed us to really, just prove ourselves in the market. We've done the connections. We've got a few really big travel agents that are about to connect, which we will be announcing hopefully soon.
Very good.
And now we're doing a proper fundraise, and I think the important thing is to just understand where is the point where investors will really feel comfortable in investing in your company, given the environment where we operate in. And I think now we've finally got the numbers. We've finally got, we've got a proper plan and a clear growth strategy. And I think this is probably a right time for going back into fundraising. So we're actually we're raising a sort of a big seed round, 5 million plus.
Okay.
We incorporated the company in the US because our predecessors are all here, and I think VCs are more prone to investing into this kind of sector compared to Europe, but I may be wrong. So we're keeping our options open, obviously. Okay.
How do you find, I'm always curious, because some startups, they have different kind of relationships with their investors. So their investors actively ask for not an operational role, but a very close advisory role. What kind of a relationship do you have with your investors? Because they are seasoned veterans almost.
Yeah.
So are they quite in that advisory role, or are they a little bit, well, we've given you some money, we'll lurk around when we need to? What's the relationship that you have with your investors at the moment?
It varies a lot, but actually, this is my first company, so I'd never actually had to, handle investor relationships directly. And much to my surprise, I really found them to be extremely supportive and very understanding, rather than being, why haven't you done this? Why haven't you done that? So I haven't been really challenged too much, although I always feel a bit, on my feet, on my toes, sorry. But yeah, no, they've generally been very...
You often hear different stories about the relationship between startups and their investors, so it's interesting that you've been lucky.
I've been, but we'll see now when we take actual institutional funds how things
it
evolve.
might be very different.
But yeah, and they do say that it's a two-way sort of selection. You have to sort of decide who you want to take money from, although not every time, not always we're in that advantageous position to say no.
Okay, so you worked at Easyjet for 3 years.
4 years, actually.
4 years, I beg your pardon. So
it's okay.
What would you say that you learned from that period of working for a big, network carrier or a low-cost carrier that you've applied to either the way you run the company now or the product that you've created?
Yeah, so Easyjet was a great management school. It's a company that doesn't have much hierarchy, or was at least at the time. This was about 10 years ago. The company didn't have much hierarchy. Everyone was entitled to an opinion. You could always see the end result of whatever work stream you were doing. And I was lucky enough to spend 2 years reporting directly to the chief operating officer. And I really was working basically for the senior ops leadership team and really learned how to run a company from a broad perspective. Easyjet is a very organized company. Just the ways of working are really, really structured, and that helps me a lot in how I manage my company today. So I guess the management from the efficiency, bringing together teams that will perform towards some really high demanding initiatives or objectives are really, really good. So that's probably what I've learned the most.
Yeah, and the wonderful thing about LinkedIn is we can also find out what you studied as well. So you did a master's in air transport management, which I think I think that's interesting, because so many of the startup founders that you interview in travel, they did specific business degrees or they did marketing degrees. But it's interesting, you did actually a travel related one. So talk us through, what was that process? How did that go?
It was basically a big brainwash of thinking and dreaming and speaking like an airline. And it was great because it really sets you up for success. It's basically a year of acceleration in airline management. It is a really good school, and for anyone wanting to pursue airline studies, I would really recommend Cranfield. You get guest lecturers that are all CEOs of airlines or people who've been in the trenches of an airline that really teach you how things are. And yeah, I just always knew I wanted to do something in the airline space, and hence why I just dove straight into it.
Okay, and here you are. So thank you very much, Alice Ferrari from Kyte. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.